It's 6 o'clock in London, it's 1 p.m. in New York, and indeed I am in London today. It's 1 a.m. in Hong Kong, 3 a.m. in Sydney, 10 a.m. in San Francisco, and 10:30 at night in Mumbai. Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Patrick L. Young, the IPO-VID livestream, Series 9, Episode 6. That makes 54, for those of you who've run out of fingers and toes to count, starts here. This week in the parish of exchanges, it wasn't just a big week for results, it was a mega big week of results. One mega week of big results, one might say. Of course, Nasdaq had already set the scene the previous week for double-digit profit gains, and we'll be getting back to that big name in just a moment. This week, ICE, the Intercontinental Exchange Group, kicked off the fireworks and they announced a 15% dividend increase. Soon after, the results showed a handy uptick as the wires fizzled, and we saw a 90%, 90 year-on-year gap diluted earning per share. Even the simple measures showed double-digit growth pretty much as far as the balance sheet stretched. As I noticed in Exchange Invest, the overall mortgage numbers year-on-year remind us that when given a few billion grains of data, ICE doesn't just make bread. They deliver the finest caviar on top of the best blini with your choice of excellent champagne or the prime iced vodka of your dreams. And then we got the results from SIBO. They came in with a 90% leap in fourth quarter profits. And then even that was upended. An awesome triumvirate of results in 1 week. The National Stock Exchange of India, you may recall, of course, that they are, whisper it softly, perhaps finally, after only a decade of asking, approaching the on-ramp towards their very own IPO, initial public offering. Their numbers for the December 2021 quarter reflected a staggering 545.5%. Oh, all right then, 545.46% rise in profits. Anyway, earlier this week, we marked the anniversary of February the 8th, 1971. That was the day when Nasdaq was created by the National Association of Stock Dealers to enable investors to trade securities on a computerized, speedy, and transparent system. Thus, they commenced operations, and well, as we know, ladies and gentlemen, the rest is history. Here's to many more successful years under the excellent stewardship of Adina Friedman. And indeed, today, we're looking at a wonderfully and exciting, diverse moment in Exchange Invest with our special guest. But first, let me remind you, all these stories and more have already been covered in greater detail in Exchange Invest Daily, the unique newsletter of the Bourse Business. Send us an email or hit me up, Patrick L. Young, on whatever social media you're watching this evening, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or indeed that other one. What is that other one? Oh, yes, I'm sure we remember YouTube. Send us an email, send us a little bit of love if you can possibly manage it, ladies and gentlemen. Ask us a question. We'll be delighted to hear from you. And if you'd like a free trial to the Daily Bourse Business Digest, then let me know. We'll get you signed up for a 30-day trial. As I hinted earlier, our guest today is Erja Retzén. The topic from First North to infinity and beyond. Erja Retzén is Senior Managing Director at Nasdaq Global Listing Services. She works closely with existing and future issuers listed on Nasdaq Nordic and with startup and scale-up communities. She's got specific sectoral experience in mining and exploration, gaming and cleantech. So there you go, a polyglot guest this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Erja joined Nasdaq in 2005 and previously she held a number of managerial roles within marketing, communications, business excellence, and project management. So, Erja, good evening. Where in the world are you today?
Hi, Patrick. Yeah, I'm here in Helsinki, all alone in an empty office. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that you're all alone, but at the same time, delighted to see that you're filling the screen for us this evening, bringing your huge personality forward. Now, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, I think I first met you not long after you'd actually arrived at Nasdaq, and you had this amazing, fascinating job to suddenly rejuvenate and grow the listings franchise. But tell us a little bit about how you actually got there in the first place.
You mean in general to the listings?
In general, yeah.
Well, I think it was an interesting position for an engineer. So I have a master's thesis in engineering, and so, but it has been a long journey to record years when it comes to working on Helsinki. I mean Helsinki. I mean, when I started, it was still OMX, the Nordic exchange operator, and then 2018, Nasdaq came along, and then we were part of something bigger and better.
So you became something bigger, part of something bigger and better, but OMX itself had been a trailblazer across Scandinavia for many years and also into the Baltic states. Now, the first time I met you, you were actually championing, effectively jumping forward with, I think, First North and other parts of the listings franchise. And I must say, I remember at the time, because a lot of people in other exchanges, they weren't just a little bit cynical, they were abjectly cynical. They really didn't think we were going to see you back again. And here you are now. Remind us, how many listings did you have last year in the Nordics with Nasdaq?
So we had 219 listings, and out of those, 174 were actually pure IPOs. So it was a record year for us, especially in Finland. We broke the record from 1999. So that was the big bubble year. And now we hit the new numbers there to the board. Yeah, but I think it's not just about the record year itself. This has been a long journey. So when we started after the financial crisis, especially here in Finland, it was a bit dry season, and we had to come up with new ideas how to engage investors and companies and really convince the community that listing is a good option for a company. And from that perspective, we started a kind of IPO project here in Finland. So meeting all big pension funds, all the power players, decision makers, different kind of investors, I mean, venture capital, private equity and all that. And really, I mean, every time there was a possibility to speak up, talk about listings. So we were there waving the IPO flag and really working together with different kinds of associations and Chamber of Commerces and junior chambers and anything you could where you could spread the word, and also integrating to the startup community. So it was not just hunting for big fishes. So it was really educating the market on different levels and increasing the knowledge of listings. And also the ecosystem itself, it's supporting the whole story. So, I mean, there's more expertise, lots of expertise available on the Nordic level. And then local specialities are taken into consideration. And also it somehow supports, for example, I would say that one of our best salespersons in Finland are the certified advisors who are able to escort the companies to First North, to our growth market. And they are really the gatekeepers. I mean, whenever they meet dozens of companies, they are just evaluating, is this a good set for the market? And in many cases, on most cases, they are saying that next, I mean, maybe you should grow for a couple of years. Maybe you should develop and reach the next level or stage, or, I mean, get more muscles. So I would say that that also helps when the advisors are very, how do you say, when they are very picky and they are cautious with the companies. So it also helps to create credibility and respect to the market. And now we see all the hard work done during, let's say, 10 past years, and now reaching record numbers. And I mean, get those all private investors enthusiastic about First North companies. I mean, like 30,000 private investors are investing to First North companies entering the market through their IPO, etc. So it's really all the work done during the years on different levels in different countries and using different measures and tools and ways.
It's really fascinating, isn't it? Because, of course, one of those little known facts which by dint of the fact is little known, I suspect a lot of our viewers won't realize, is that actually, if I do recollect precisely, one of the oldest companies in the world is actually Stora Enso, which of course has long been a stalwart of Finnish business.
Yes, I mean, of course, on the main market, on the main board, we have companies that have been listed like 100 years or something like that. They have maybe a different form from the beginning. I mean, lots of mergers and acquisitions taking place, but still you have the seed of the company there existing. And I think it's good that we are also celebrating these anniversaries, so 50 years since listed, 75, 100. And it's also nice that companies also appreciate that they get this moment in the tower in US and New York, and having a little celebration together with us. So it also shows that the marketplace has been lively and vivid during the years, during the centuries. So it's amazing. So, and also for when it comes to First North, so we see that over 100 companies have actually moved from First North, from growth market to the main market. So it's really a good like a preschool for companies, and then when they feel that they are ready to move to the big boys league, then they can make a switch to the main market. But what is good with First North, the growth market, is actually that the marketplace itself doesn't set any rules that if you have been for X years on First North, or if you reach certain market cap, you have to move to the main market. So as long as the company and its owners feel that it is the right place for the company to be, so then First North is a good, excellent choice.
Very interesting altogether. So we're here this evening. We are discussing the wonderfully exciting concept of looking at Nasdaq Nordic from First North to infinity and beyond with the MD of Listing Services, Erja Retzén. It's a intriguing conversation coming to us from a snowy Helsinki to a rather grey London. Plus ça change in the latter case. Let me say thank you very much to the various viewers who've already been checking in this evening. Hello, Peter Secon. Good evening, Marcus Ward. Simon Huckle. It's lovely to see you as always. Hello, Les Calvert as well. Great to hear from you. If you've got a question for Erja, just drop it into the chat, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be delighted to take it. So, Erja, it's very interesting. I mean, the demographics of where you've built First North strike me as being really intriguing. I'm not trying to be rude, but we all know that Scandinavia, the Nordics, the Baltic states, they're all remarkably large, but they don't really have that many people per square mile pro rata compared to packed places like the UK. Wasn't it very daunting to create a competitor, essentially, or a lookalike or a similar small, medium enterprise market to, say, the AIM in London in First North, given the fact that it wasn't automatically seen as being a big area in which you would raise capital?
Definitely. I mean, it has been a challenge, but I think we have been very straightforward in our development of the marketplace. And as said, there is a huge support from the Nordic community. Ecosystem is strong. So they are investors of different sizes, of all sizes. And especially on First North, the retail investors are extremely active on trading with the First North shares. So that has really kept the liquidity on a good level. And even during the COVID and before that, we have seen that there has been a tremendous rise in trading on First North companies, also from international perspective. So international investors and larger investors, they have now found the First North. So it's not just a local marketplace for local companies, because we have also, I mean, majority of those companies listed on First North, they are actually Nordic companies, but we have roughly 30 companies also outside the Nordics. So I would say that all these IPO reports big four companies are producing, for several years, they have now highlighted that there is this a kind of Nordic wonder, Nordic miracle that so many listings take place. And nowadays, First North is the largest growth market in Europe. So these reports have really pinpointed that something is happening in the Nordics, and from there it seems that also, I mean, entrepreneurs, investors, they are really directing their headlights to the Nordics, and therefore we have these listings from UK, from Ireland, from Germany, from France, uh, from Malta, and some of these companies, or majority of those, they have maybe some roots or something, some connection, natural connection to the Nordics. But then there are also those who just see that their peers and their customers or the investors they are interested in are located in the Nordic area, and therefore they feel that Nasdaq Nordic, Nasdaq First North is a great fit for them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And certainly you did incredibly well over recent years with what I might call sort of diaspora companies. I mean, you mentioned there the fact that you've got listings from Malta, for instance. Well, I think most of your listings from Malta are in gaming, iGaming, gambling. And actually, most of them are actually Scandinavian companies who were driven out by the laws, ended up in Malta. But fascinatingly, they didn't list in Malta, they didn't list in London. They ended up choosing First North, which certainly shows something you were doing very, very well, both in scouting those listings as well as having the advisors to groom the companies.
Yeah, and I think also because we have statistics stating that it's not just you can have a successful IPO on Nasdaq Nordic, but we also have the after trading. So there is liquidity taking place, and also you can have secondaries and all the other financial tools available for you when there is more demand for capital in coming years. So it's really the well-functioning ecosystem supporting both the trading and the listings, and then there is this active trading community taking care of the after trading. And I would say that in the Nordic countries, especially in Sweden and Finland, we can also thank officials creating the savings account system. So you can trade within your own portfolio, and you don't have to worry about the taxes or anything like that. And it's just the taxes come into picture when you get your profits out of the portfolio. So that has increased, especially in Finland, the appetite of retail investors towards IPOs.
It's really, really fascinating altogether. And certainly, as you say, you're stressing the ecosystem and stressing the fact that you've got these excellent cadre of advisors. Now, those advisors, and we've got a great question coming from Peter Secon. Peter, just let me hold back for a second. I just want to finish this train of thought. But you mentioned the advisors. Now, it's very interesting because the advisors themselves, where are they from? Are they all local Scandinavian companies or Nordic companies, or are they regional, or?
Yes, some of those, I mean, of course, they are Nordic mostly. We have a couple of non-Nordics, and they have brought companies also to, for example, to Copenhagen. But then normally they are local players. So they have their finger on the pulse. They have they touch the ground, and they know the companies, and they know the investors who are interested in such companies. But then we also have these more cross-border certified advisors who are looking for different markets. And I think it's good that also some of the advisors are more boutique style, so they are independent. And then we have this big Nordic banks like Danske Bank, Nordea, SEB, and some others, Carnegie, who are just working on a Nordic level and also have their subsidiaries outside the Nordics. So they are in a way covering both the Nordics and then the wider perspective. But I would say that also these local smaller advisors, they are very, very important for the whole setup, because they have a good reach on a local level, and they are able to escort maybe a smaller companies also to First North. So I mean, I think these market caps on First North, they may vary from few million euros to over billion euros, and everything in between. And they all also represent different sectors, and they come from different parts of the countries on each individual country. So it is good that there is this variation. So it's not just this type of companies enter the market. So there is pre-revenue companies and those who are very mature, and as said, everything in between.
Fabulous altogether. Thank you, Ian Miller, for the like. I really appreciate that very much indeed. So just a couple of very quick fire questions. First North, you mentioned the euro, but obviously there are a number of different currencies in circulation around your catchment area. So are companies listed in their own, in a domestic currency against one of the particular cities, countries of the First North archipelago?
Yeah, so in Finland it's euros, Denmark is Danish crowns. In Sweden we have, companies can choose either it's euros or Swedish crowns, and majority goes to crowns. And then Iceland and the Baltic countries, they have their own setup. Also in the Baltics it's euros. So it's still, even though we talk about Nasdaq Nordic, we have independent exchanges. So by the end of the process, you need to choose. Do you go to Stockholm? Do you go to Copenhagen? Or is your first choice Helsinki?
Okay, that's very interesting. And what sort of a difference does that make for a company? Obviously, I can understand if I'm a Finnish, whatever it is, pizza manufacturer or something, then naturally I will want to be in Helsinki. But if you're a more international company, is there a particular range of choice as to where you might want to go?
Well, of course, companies can choose the listing venue where they want to be listed, but I think it is so that our rule book on First North, it's international, it's common for all markets. So nowadays there is a good representation of investors and traders on all markets. So probably you pick and choose the venue that you think is the best choice for you. So if you for Finnish company, it's easier to get listed in Finland because we have different kind of restrictions when you are a Finnish company listed only outside Finland. But that's a kind of detail. We don't have to go to that. But then I would say that it's really the sector you are in and investor base you are looking into, and what are your ambitions for the future. That's determine the listing venue. But I would say that globally 95% of the companies, they normally get listed in the country where they are registered.
Okay, so 90% get listed in the country are registered in. What about reporting? Do all the companies have to report in the domestic language, or do they also report in English, or how does that work?
On First North, companies can choose, do they use the local language or just English? But on main market, if you are a Finnish company, you have to report in Finnish or Swedish. Those are our official languages, and then English can be an addition. But then, if you are a non-Finnish company and you would like to get listed in Helsinki, so then you could choose Finnish only. No, English only. Sorry.
That's all right. We're here with the encyclopedic Erja Retzén as she goes through all of the facts and figures of that incredible Nasdaq Nordic success story from to infinity and beyond. Well, certainly to good grief, 219 listings alone last year. Absolutely spectacular numbers. If you've got a question, please fire it in through the chat. We're going to go to our first question this evening with Peter Sekon. Hello, Peter. Great to see you once again. Hi, Erja. You talk about growth. Bitcoin and the likes are not directly traded through any stock exchange, but with the growing crying for mass adoption and ability to trade crypto on exchanges, linking the fiat and crypto markets, does Nasdaq A, believe this is the future, B, have any strategic desires to eventually offer this on its exchange, and I suppose C, how do you see this working?
Well, I have to admit that Bitcoins are not my specialty, so I'm not expert on that. But of course, we have had meetings with companies working with Bitcoins, and let's see what the future brings. So have to be a bit fake here. So.
Well, we also all got regulators that have to be very careful of. If you jump out and say you're going to trade lots of Bitcoins, then they get very, very shirty indeed. On the other hand, it sounds to me as if you're just incredibly busy with the SME environment. So as a matter of interest, I mean, you talked about statistics. Has there been an upswing in the number of new companies in the Nordics concomitant with the upswing in listed Nasdaq Nordic companies?
Maybe could you rephrase the question?
Well, I'm just wondering, has there been an explosion of new companies in the Nordics as a whole? I mean, new companies being founded,
Yeah.
and has that helped feed the listings boom, or is it actually a case that you're managing to help nurture a lot of companies without there being a huge growth in the base of small companies?
Yeah, I would say that there has been a kind of increase. So the previous record year we had, it was in 2017. So then it was 118 listings. So now we broke the record with 100 companies. But it really goes up and down. So you never know what before the last day of December, what is the actual number for that year. And I would say that success creates success. So in many cases, you see that the guys you studied with, they have listed their company with a great success, and that of course creates appetite and interest towards the listing. And therefore, I mean, it's also very important to bring up these case studies and really represent companies in different occasions, that so then they can tell their story and they can have their voice out. I mean, just to spread their expertise, their experiences, and also the companies want to share their pitfalls. I mean, what would they do in a different way, and all that. And I would say that also these CEOs and CFOs of companies that have been listed in recent years, they are all also eager to share their ideas and really help those who are thinking about getting listed. So it's not a struggle to get companies to speak in different IPO clinics or IPO related events. And also, I mean, when entrepreneurs and investors, they call these CEOs and CFOs, so they are, I mean, happy to talk and share their views and really help the newcomers enter the market. So I think there is some kind of like the community is also helping each other, so that, I mean, the next listing might be a bit easier and quicker, and also done in a more effective way.
Fascinating altogether. And meanwhile, I must apologize, actually, Erja. I realized as I was saying it, concomitant, hardly a fair word to offer at any point in time, least of all during an interview. My producer is delicately berating me through the earpiece for my vocabulary on occasions. We've got an interesting question coming here from Martin Watkins. Looks as if you can't escape the digital world. The kids are determined to talk about Bitcoin this evening. 150 thanks for this, Martin. Great session, Erja and Patrick. What plans does Nasdaq have regarding the European Union DLT pilot regime and the MiCA exemptions?
Oh my God, where do you find these topics? I have no idea.
That's quite all right. I think that's a perfectly fair answer. I think this evening is definitely not one of our crypto evenings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry that you can't manage to get an answer immediately. Thank you very much for that, Martin. But I think it's certainly
Yeah,
very
but
interesting.
if
The
possible,
EU,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. If I can have the question afterwards, so I can find a specialist to answer to that.
We're gonna phone a friend and find out what the answer to that is in due course, Martin. Of course, so what we do know is in the course of last week, as was reported in Exchange Invest, that the Luxembourg Stock Exchange, they launched the first digital securities token through that European Union DLT exemption, which was a very interesting move altogether. So between large vocab and lots of men with an obsession with Bitcoin, let's move to another question I do believe has just arrived somewhere. Fascinating discussion, very insightful info, Erja. I quite agree. Thank you on behalf of Women on IT. rock the future, hack the future as well. Does Nasdaq Nordic allow SPACs?
Absolutely. I mean, we had our first SPACs last year, 6 in total, and so 4 in Sweden and 2 in Finland. And then actually on the first trading day of this year, we already had the first D-SPAC. So Finland was leading the SPAC way in the Nordics. But I think that in the future this year, it's interesting to see that how many new SPACs there will be listed and what kind of mergers and acquisitions there will take place. But we know that, I mean, SPACs are of interest also to the retail investors because in a way it allows you to participate in a kind of private equity activities. And the first D-SPAC we had in the Nordics, it was very, very promising. As a well-known, well-respected company got listed on Helsinki main market. And then we are waiting for the others to follow. So definitely, SPACs are on our service list.
Excellent news altogether. Great to hear about the success of the first 6 SPACs, which is a difficult phrase to actually manage to get out in the English language. So Ian has also asked us a question. Thank you very much, Erja, for answering that question. Thank you, Woman on It, for your question. Hi, Erja. How much has the Estonian e-residency contributed to the Nordic success, do you think? I've heard that the expansion of e-residency is greater than the country's birth rate. Not asking you to comment on the second part of that. You don't have to answer that part. But I'm just curious, do you think that schemes such as Estonian e-residency, which has led to a boom in a lot of startups, has helped Nasdaq Nordic?
Yeah, I definitely think that there is, I mean, bits and pieces here and there. So it is a joint venture. So all these pieces are connected. And then, I mean, there has been also an active listing year in Tallinn. So we have the Tallinn exchange. So Nasdaq Tallinn has had their share of listings also. So very interesting companies. And also Estonian and other Baltic companies are surveilling Nasdaq Nordic's exchanges like Stockholm. So definitely there is cooperation, cross-border cooperation between companies and countries.
Well, it's very interesting you say that because actually one of the things that strikes me about the success of Nasdaq Nordic, and in fact one of the successes before that of OM and OMX, was the way that it managed to really meld a trans-Scandinavian and ultimately trans-Baltic, trans-Nordic culture. And it is fascinating how much cooperation goes on between the different venues at every level. You're talking about the banks, the issuers, the listed companies, and also all of the people who are obviously working in the exchange, but particularly those guys who are in all of the different, I'm going to call them nomads because I'm used to that always as being the AIM London parlance, but all the people who are the investment banking advisors and brokers to these companies. There's a huge amount of cooperation in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think because we are all small nations, so we have to share forces and really make the best out of it. So it's like 1 + 1, it has to be more than 2.
1 + 1, it has to be more than 2. There you go. Bit of Enron accounting for this time in the evening. That's always very useful. Thank you, Erja. We've got a comment, I think, from Peter Sekon has come in at this juncture, which is quite fascinating. Oh, another long one. As Nasdaq First North grows, luring British companies and investors away from their London local market to the burgeoning Nordic equities market, and more broadly, attracting international countries that want to list in Europe. What do you see as the biggest hurdle in achieving year-on-year growth and attracting more investors?
Maybe it's really this cross-border trading. That's one thing. So there is always this clearing and settlement arrangements and where the book entry system is located and all that. So more like technical issues, because from the trading perspective, we see that more and more members are getting access to the First North platform. Even though main market and First North are on the same INET platform, trading platform, that you still have to have connection to both markets. but that's really increasing the international members amount on the First North also, and that, in other words, also means that the trading on First North becomes more international month by month.
Very interesting. Becoming more international. You've got this incredible record as you go First North from to infinity and beyond. And it's really quite interesting, though, because, I mean, generally in Europe, if I may say so, I mean, as a whole, both within the European Union and indeed beyond the European Union. And it's interesting because Nasdaq Nordics, obviously, you're kind of straddling. You've got countries that are inside the European Union, countries that are outside it. But I mean, we've had, 10 years now or more of great SME growth initiatives from the European Union. And the spectacular success story within the European Union does appear to be the Nordics. Why do you think that you're doing so well compared to the rest of continental Europe?
Interesting question. So again, I go back to the community and the ecosystem. So it's not just us doing a great job. It's really the banks and brokers and all other advisors and investors in as a whole. So we need all different parties to make it happen. And I would say that also, I mean, traditionally Nordic exchanges has been very international exchanges. For example, in Finland, about 43% of shareholdings of Finnish companies is actually foreign. So we have never been local exchanges. And if you look the trading, so the most active traders are also not local ones. They are these big banks and brokers from international banks and brokers that have now their offices in continental Europe. I mean, after the Brexit, the whole setup changed a bit. So it's all the levels covered. So that might be the recipe for the success of the market.
A multilateral solution for First North to infinity and beyond. Yes, quite fascinating. But actually, to go back to the comment Peter sort of made at the start of his question, I mean, have you found that there are companies that are currently listed in London on the SME markets have been looking towards Nasdaq Nordic as an alternative?
Yeah, I think there are these companies and advisors, London city-based advisors who are scanning different possibilities for their clients. So, and we see that also Nasdaq Nordic and First North is on their radar. And as said earlier, we do have already UK and Ireland registered companies listed on First North. So maybe we should have a bigger marketing campaign in UK, for example, to create more appetite. But as said, many companies have their peers in the Nordics now, and they see that those IPOs and life as a listed company has been very good for the development of the company. So I think that's also helping to spread the word and really create the interest and the appetite to get listed in the Nordics.
And of course, one of the interesting side benefits that these companies get while they're listing, which is something that we often see in your LinkedIn feed, for example, Erja, is the opportunity to light up Times Square. You go up the side of the Nasdaq building there and so on. Is that something that really excites the companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every time you get your own personalized tower picture, so your company is put up there in the middle of Times Square to the 7-story billboard. Of course, it's really hard. Your heart starts pumping, and companies, they do appreciate that we try to use the US activities as much as possible. So, for example, for our large cap companies, we have an annual investor seminar in New York together with SAP, And we also, our listed companies, they can get, they can ring opening or closing bell in US, in New York, and then have like a, if you have employees in US, you can invite also them to this ceremony. And I think for those US residents, it's really a big thing, because then you can also say to your family and friends and relatives that, hey, look at CNN or CBS on that evening or morning. I will be there waving, because those bell ceremonies are also broadcasted live to various TV channels.
Yes, it's a great piece of publicity for everybody, the opportunity. It's quite fascinating to see how many middle-aged executives suddenly seem to take an active interest in campanology when it involves a very large stock exchange. We've got a great question just come in, actually, Erja, from one of your peer group, a man with considerable experience in the SME stock market business. Good evening, Thomas Carruthers. It's lovely to hear from you this evening. The Nordic countries already have a good to great name for sustainability. But do you think the rise of ESG is specifically an opportunity to attract new listings on your market?
Absolutely. ESG is in our DNA. So for many years, we have been working around ESG and really creating our ESG portfolio, so services and products available for listed and non-listed companies. And for example, we have this ESG reporting 2.0 book, or kind of like a guidance, so companies can voluntarily start reporting on ESG on the level they prefer. So it's not a must, but it's like a, maybe you should take a look at this. And then we have ESG portal, ESG advisory services, ESG data hub. And then last summer, we also introduced new Nasdaq green equity designation. So for those companies who are really emphasizing that they are green and their business is green and they want to be even greener, so those companies can have a external evaluation on those key KPIs and matters they are working on, and then we can grant, when they pass the evaluation, they can get this Nasdaq green designation stamp or recognition. And we have 4 of those at the moment. And first, this year we had already one in Finland, Nordic Cooperation. It's a very promising company working with environmental risk and issues, and oil recovery and all that. So it's really the core of their business. And I would say that ESG and the importance of it's getting more and more value within Nasdaq, and we see that for certain companies it is really one of those pulling factors that they want to get listed and they want to have the green label also for their company.
So you mentioned that, actually. That's really, really interesting. Explain it to us just a little bit more, Erja. You mentioned this Nasdaq Green Destination. What does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
So now I have something. So it means, I have notes here so that it goes. So it's really external valuation companies. External auditors, they evaluate the company. Nowadays it's Cicero and Moody's ESG. Those are our partners. And then the company gets a report. And when they can tick all the boxes our criteria is demanding, so then the company will get this green equity designation.
Very interesting. And so that certification then is something that can be used, obviously, as a badge of ESG honor going forward with the appropriate investors. Are you seeing a lot of investor demand for ESG stock generally?
Yes, it's really increasing rapidly. And this is also one way to help private investors to look into those shares that have the green label. So you can filter on our website, for example, you can filter the green ones. And then you know that when you invest to those, they have met the criteria we, together with the market participants, have set for the recognition.
Fascinating altogether, Erja. And actually, you remind me, of course, that if you're interested in this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, you didn't see it live, check out our back episodes wherever you're watching this, for example, YouTube or LinkedIn or indeed Facebook. You can catch Fredrik Ekstrom. He's the head of green at Nasdaq, and he was on just a couple of weeks ago. He's also chairman of Puro Earth, and we were talking all about the carbon markets with him, with our guest host, Steve Zwick, who joins us as our green expert on those weeks. And you can get a lot more discussion about not so much the green destination on the listed equity side, but actually what Nasdaq is looking at in ESG and carbon per se. That brings us very neatly, Erja, to a question from Ian Miller. And Ian Miller is about to transgress just about every possible vestige of material non-public information I can possibly manage to look at as a executive director of the listed Valerium PLC. He asks, and I'm not sure that we're going to be able to answer this, children, if and when Valerium gets approved by the Gibraltar Financial Services Commission, that's because of our pending purchase of 90% of the Gibraltar Stock Exchange, would Valerium see an advantage in listing with the Nasdaq Nordic exchange so that they can also enjoy the investment opportunities via their own exchange? Well, Erja, there you go. You've got... I can't make any comment at this point in time because we're subject to regulatory approval. But if you had somebody who walked in today with, say, a company that was listed on, say, the Aquis Exchange in London, what sort of a pitch would you be giving them over what would be the advantages to Nasdaq Nordic?
So I would say that, I mean, it's dual listings they are not very common nowadays, but of course in certain sectors and for certain companies, they are very fruitful landing spot. So I would see, I mean, it would be great to know that what the company is really expecting from a listing in the Nordics. If they are listed in another venue already, and then they are seeking for a listing in the Nordics. So in many cases, it might be so that company has a project in the Nordics, or they have big owners in the area or something like that, or they have peers that have made it big in the Nordics, and they feel that there might be also room for them and really support that sector on First North. So definitely, we are happy to talk to companies listed already in other exchanges, because it's always good to have new material on the markets. And even though if it doesn't take, first step is not the listing, we might introduce also the company to the Nordic investment community and help them to create networks and introduce them to advisors who might be in a way able to look into in more details to the company, and then also suggest the next steps that might be worth taking before entering the market. So sometimes it's good to also have a slow approach, but I would say that for some companies, for example, gaming companies, so if they are strong peers on the market, you might also join the peer group in the Nordics if it's good for the company and it really fits to their plans for the future.
Thank you very much, Erja. And therefore, Erja, it's an interesting question, actually, because obviously we know that in New York, there is the most incredible amount of cutthroat competition between the two major New York exchanges, of which one is, of course, Nasdaq, your compatriots on the other side of the Atlantic in Times Square. What has the situation been at Nasdaq Nordic? We've discussed IPOs. You've obviously had that incredible 200 plus listings last year. So therefore, can we presume that the 174 and the 209, which therefore makes a number that I'm going to have difficulty computing, but there's somewhere about 25 or 30 companies that you mentioned that didn't have full IPOs. Are many of those actually transferring from other markets, or how have things been developing for you?
So some of those have gone. I mean, they have been listed, for example, on other exchanges or the marketplaces in Sweden, and then they have switched to Nasdaq Stockholm. But then we also have this direct listing. So the company may have had a private placement before the listing, and then they have just a technical listing. So majority of those 30 plus companies, 40 companies that are missing from the total number. So they are these technical listings. So the capital raise took place before the before the listing. So there was no actual IPO, and then the company got listed. And in the figure of 219, there are also 12 companies who made a switch from First North to main market.
Wow. So that's quite an incredible thing as well. So effectively, you had 12 companies that went up to the Premier League. You had 219 companies altogether coming into the market. It's been quite an incredible year altogether, particularly given the fact that it seems to be not that long ago where nobody really thought any stock exchange could manage to list more than about one share a week. It must get quite hectic sometimes, even between your different offices around the region.
Well, you can imagine last year in Stockholm, there were 150 listings all in total. So quite busy day. So I think on one day we had, was it 6 or 7 listings simultaneously? So it really, it means that there are hectic times. But as we know, there are these IPO windows, so it's not all the time. So they might pack to certain periods of the year.
So that also raises an interesting question, because how do things work with the regulators and with the listing authorities? Because obviously there must be quite a large number of listing authorities in the mix for Nasdaq Nordic, because you've got a series of offices in all of the different Nasdaq countries across the Nordics.
Well, I believe that FSAs have been forced to hire new personnel to take care of the flow of prospectuses. But then, of course, I mean, majority of those 219 companies, they got listed on First North. And that means that if you raise, for example, in Finland, less than 8 million euros, it means that you can make a company description that is reviewed by the exchange, not the FSA. And there are the similar setups also in other countries. So if you are raising a smaller amount of euros or money, capital, so it means that you can also have a lighter listing process, and then the official papers are approved, or the company description is approved by the exchange, not by the FSA. So that really takes some of the load away from the FSAs and officials outside the Nasdaq. Yeah.
And just to be clear, that's if you're raising less than 8 million euros. But if existing shareholders want to sell at the same point in time, does that count towards the 8 million euros being issued? Or is it simply the 8 million of new capital that gets you away from having to do a full prospectus listing?
Oh, if I remember correct, I think it's all included. So the capital raised and sold is all together. Yeah.
It's all included. Okay, now I'm just curious as the technicalities. I suspect some of our viewers would be quite fascinated by that. But look, I mean, Erja, this has been an absolutely incredible discussion. We've ranged all the way through the different Nordic, Baltic, Scandinavian countries, and you've talked to us about this amazing series of listings, 174, if I got that right, IPOs, 219 listings. So you're creating your very own powerhouse revolution in First North. But where do you think the capital market revolution goes next?
Well, personally, I would like to see that, I mean, this cross-border trading and listings are getting easier, not so complicated. So we have to get rid of these local rules and regulations regarding this and that. I mean, clearing and settlement and all that. So it's on my wish list.
Simplifying cross-border listings, making life much easier. In fact, heading towards that single European market that's been threatened for so long by the European Union and not actually delivered. Gosh, who knows, sooner or later, they might even try and come up with a coherent initiative to help us with small capital raising. So Erja Retzén, it has been absolutely fascinating to be with you this evening. It's been a most interesting discussion to infinity and beyond with Nasdaq Nordic on the back of those amazing 219 listings. That's just absolutely sensational. You're mentioning also in your home market of Finland, you broke the record last year, which had stood since 1999 on the cusp of the new millennium, and how exciting that was to see that. Great to hear you saying ESG is in our DNA as you discuss the green destination of Nasdaq Nordic, and also how you've built an incredible ecosystem, and indeed coming as you do from Finland, the land in which we have one of the world's oldest trading companies, Stora Enso. So fascinating to hear how the cooperation works across borders, across the region, and even with the regulators in so many ways. You've got 6 SPACs on your market. And also a great deal of international investor interest. As you mentioned, 43% of Finnish company ownership is in fact overseas shareholders. Really interesting to be with you this evening. And next week, we're looking forward to a very interesting show. We're going to be back into the world of carbon. We're looking at holistic renewable energy and carbon. And that's going to be with our special guest, Henrik Hasselknip. And we're looking forward to hearing all about an addition to the carbon markets. That's going to be with my co-host and green expert, Steve Bionic Planet Zvik. It only remains for me this evening, ladies and gentlemen, to say a big word of thanks to all those of you who've contributed this evening. Thank you very much also to those of you who are delivering the likes. So, Peter Secon, thanks for the questions and comments. Marcus Ward, Simon Huckle, Martin Watkins, Ian, Woman on It, Thomas Carruthers, and Ian Caldwell. I really appreciate all of your different inputs today. And let's close today with just a little thought about the fact that, of course, it is 51 years ago since the birth of Nasdaq itself. Look at the way that has revolutionized stock markets across the world. And indeed, thanks to OMX and OMX becoming part of the Nasdaq group in 2008, the incredible opportunity that's given us for First North to grow to infinity and beyond. Sachin Patel, Robert Brown, thank you very much for your kind comments. This has been IPO-VID number 54. Thank you to our guest, Erja Retzén, once again. My name is Patrick L. Young. I wish you, all Valerium PLC shareholders, and everybody who's reading Exchange Invest, a wonderful week in life, blockchain, and markets. See you next week.